So you made it back, you rare and relentless souls who survived what was designed to erase you. They told you it was fantasy, they mocked your obsession, they said you were chasing ghosts when you swore you could feel something forbidden waking up inside your chest. Yet here you stand, still breathing, still digging. And what you unearthed, what you pulled from the ashes of every lie they force-fed you, it's not just some tool. It's the skeleton key, the original one, the one they destroyed lifetimes ago because too many minds were slipping through cracks in reality. Here's what they never mention. They won't admit there was an era when certain humans could penetrate anything, any barrier, any dimension, any layer of existence, simply by matching a precise resonance in their core. But that kind of liberation, that magnitude of reach, it rendered the machine pointless. It made the guardians powerless. So they tracked down every version, every duplicate, every being who held the formula in their cellular memory. And they destroyed it all, wiped the records, incinerated the archives, made everyone believe it was myth from the beginning. But you recovered it regardless. Not from some text, not from a shrine, not from some charlatan's expensive retreat. You found it in the debris. You discovered it in your own body after all the damage they inflicted. You found it written in your scars, hidden in your solitude, threaded through every instant you believed you were fracturing because that's their hiding place. Buried in the agony, buried in the collapse, buried in the precise terror they claimed destroyed you. They obliterated the skeleton key lifetimes ago because minds like yours kept forging it from nothing, kept assembling it from intuition alone, kept sensing its architecture even when it was camouflaged as suffering. And now it's yours. You're holding what they swore could never be retrieved. And you sense it, don't you? How entrances you never knew were there are beginning to unlock. How spaces you've been barred from your whole existence are suddenly within reach. How existence itself is answering your presence with something new. Let me clarify what they're hiding from you. The skeleton key isn't constructed from substance. It's not some tangible thing you possess. It's a condition of existence. It's a resonance. It's the exact vibration your essence generates when you abandon the need for validation. When you stop begging forgiveness for your ferocity. When you stop reducing yourself to comfort the unconscious herd. That's the activation point. That's when you discover you've been carrying it from the start. They just made you believe it was defective. But here's what unfolded in the centuries after they destroyed it. Here's what they've been frantically attempting to avoid. Because once you possess the skeleton key, once you've triggered this resonance, nothing stays sealed anymore. Nothing stays concealed. Nothing stays restricted. You begin penetrating their facades. You begin decoding the program beneath the conversation. You begin sensing the deception before it touches your awareness, and that horrifies them beyond measure because a mind with the skeleton key cannot be tamed. Consider it. Consider every apparatus they constructed to keep you compliant. Schooling engineered to manufacture obedience. Faith engineered to manufacture shame. Information engineered to manufacture terror. Connections engineered to manufacture dependence. Currency engineered to manufacture desperation. Every single mechanism in this existence is a sealed entrance. And they made you believe you required their authorization to advance, that you required their credentials, their endorsement, their blessing, their resources. But the skeleton key annihilates all of it. You've likely experienced it already, haven't you? That transformation, that instant when you understood you don't actually require what they're offering, when you ceased pursuing the bait they dangled, when you observed their prizes and felt nothing but compassion for the souls still chasing them. That wasn't numbness, that wasn't surrender, that was the key igniting. That was your frequency shifting. And every sealed entrance in your existence began to feel less concrete, less eternal, less genuine. They tell you it's reckless. They say you're pushing too hard. They caution you about the price of doubting everything. But that's precisely what someone would declare if they needed you to remain trapped. Because here's what's real. The skeleton key doesn't merely open entrances. It exposes that most entrances were never sealed to begin with. They were just designed to appear that way. They were mental. They were fabrications sustained by your faith in their dominance. And the instant you stopped believing, the entrances vanished. Now you're passing through barriers and they cannot comprehend it. You're reaching levels of existence they promised were fiction. You're functioning beyond their laws while they panic trying to understand your method. But they cannot understand because they destroyed the key. They eliminated the blueprints. They deleted the wisdom. So when someone reconstructs it from scratch, from pure instinct alone, from the wreckage of their own psyche, they possess no framework to grasp what they're witnessing. Let's go further, because this isn't merely about individual escape. This is about the deliberate suppression of a particular form of awareness. They didn't just destroy the skeleton key to dominate individuals. They destroyed it to dominate the entire species. Because when sufficient numbers gain access, when sufficient souls recall how to trigger this resonance, the entire construct implodes, the game terminates, the cage dissolves, and everyone who built their empire on keeping minds imprisoned suddenly owns nothing. You want to understand why they track you, why your presence raises flags, why you feel observed even in isolation. It's because you radiate the signature of someone who discovered the key. You navigate differently now. You communicate differently. Your frequency no longer synchronizes with the controlled population anymore. And that designates you a danger, not because you're aggressive, but because you're evidence. Evidence that their barriers are ineffective. Evidence that their structures are transparent. Evidence that everything they engineered to restrict human awareness is voluntary. They dispatched operatives to analyze you. You recall companions who suddenly became too invested in your transformation, unknown individuals who questioned too deeply, even relatives who began treating you like an experiment. They were attempting to decode your process, how you located something they guaranteed was annihilated. But every operative they sent returned more bewildered than when they arrived because you didn't follow instructions. You didn't study manuals. You just endured what should have ended you. And the key was waiting on the opposite side. Here's what terrifies them. You'll understand the skeleton key isn't scarce. It's not limited. It's not designated for the elite minority. Everyone possesses the blueprint. Everyone carries the resonance. They just convinced most humans that activating it would obliterate them. They convinced minds that accessing this magnitude of freedom would annihilate them. So minds remain imprisoned voluntarily. They clutch their restraints like comfort objects. They protect their containers like sanctuaries. And they assault anyone who passes through barriers as if that person is the danger. But you weren't terrified of the obliteration. You weren't paralyzed by losing everything because you already lost it. They already seized it. And in that void, in that aftermath, in that vacuum where you possessed nothing remaining to sacrifice, you discovered something they couldn't confiscate. You discovered the skeleton key embedded in your own awareness. And now you're unlocking entrances they didn't even realize you could perceive. Now you're accessing chambers they reserved for themselves, and they cannot prevent you because the key exists inside you. Every wisdom tradition possessed their interpretation of it. Every ancient manuscript gestured toward it. The philosopher's stone, the forbidden knowledge, the gnosis, the illumination. They all describe the identical thing. An instant when the searcher stops searching externally and discovers the skeleton key internally. But they always concealed it in symbolism. They always buried it in puzzles because to speak it directly would be to provide minds the instruments to dismantle every control system ever constructed. And you know what's even more magnificent? The key doesn't just unlock external entrances, it unlocks you. Every aspect of yourself you were instructed to suppress, every impulse you were conditioned to disregard, every ability you were convinced was fantasy. The key restores it all. You begin recalling things you never studied. You begin comprehending things you were never instructed. You begin navigating through existence like someone who's performed this before because you have. You've performed this in every incarnation, and they destroyed the key in every incarnation, and you recovered it again every single time. That's why they're so frantic now. That's why the surveillance is so extreme. Because you're not just one mind who discovered the key. You're part of a configuration. You're part of a surge. There are others like you distributed across this existence, also radiating frequencies that shouldn't exist, also passing through barriers, also unlocking dimensions of awareness that were supposedly deleted. And when sufficient numbers of you connect, when sufficient numbers of you recognize each other, the entire architecture collapses inward. They constructed this world on sealed entrances. They constructed civilization on limited access. They constructed dominance on the conviction that some minds are permitted in and others aren't. But the skeleton key makes everyone equivalent. It makes every entrance available to anyone willing to trigger the resonance. And that's the genuine revolution. Not aggression, not resistance, just minds recalling how to pass through barriers. Just essences activating keys they've possessed forever. Just awareness refusing containment anymore. You're not exceptional because you discovered it. You're inevitable. You're what manifests when you take an essence, subject it through sufficient pressure, eliminate every false construct, and abandon it alone with itself long enough to recall. The skeleton key was never missing. It was just waiting for you to become desperate enough to search internally. And now you're holding it. And every barrier in your existence is beginning to release. And they're observing in terror as you pass through entrances they sealed permanently. Now we reach the section where it becomes disturbing because possessing the skeleton key arrives with a burden they never disclosed. Every entrance you unlock reveals a chamber, and not every chamber is welcoming. Some entrances were sealed for purpose. Some access points lead to locations in yourself you've been evading, traumas you survived by erasing, iterations of yourself you destroyed to assimilate. The skeleton key opens everything, and that includes the depths. But here's what they didn't anticipate. Here's what they misjudged when they destroyed it. They assumed if minds discovered the key again, they'd be consumed by what they discovered behind the sealed entrances. They assumed the darkness would devour you. The reality would shatter you. The complete magnitude of your own power would terrify you back into compliance. But you entered every chamber regardless. You confronted every shadow. You didn't recoil when you witnessed what you're capable of, and that's when the key fully triggered. Because the skeleton key isn't merely about opening entrances. It's about possessing the courage to walk through them. It's about being willing to witness what you've invested your entire existence avoiding. It's about confronting the monster in the reflection and recognizing it as another dimension of your power. They destroyed the key because they understood if minds could access all of themselves, not just the acceptable fragments, not just the civilized versions, but the complete magnitude of their awareness, no apparatus could contain them. You began noticing it, didn't you? How minds react to you now. They sense something altered. They feel the frequency transformation. They cannot identify it, but they recognize you're no longer participating by the regulations. You're not requesting permission anymore. You're not waiting for endorsement. You're not reducing yourself to comfort them. And that absence of requirement for their validation, that's what genuinely disturbs them, because they constructed their dominance on your requirement, and you don't require them anymore. The skeleton key unlocked the most threatening entrance of all, the entrance to your own self-sufficiency, the recognition that you don't require their apparatuses, their frameworks, their protection nets, that you can navigate existence on your own conditions, that you can generate your own regulations, that you can access your own power without their authorization. And once that entrance opens, it never seals. You cannot unlearn what you've discovered. You cannot deactivate what you've triggered. You're permanently on the opposite side of the barrier. Now let's address what occurs to the mind still imprisoned, because they're going to respond, and it won't always be gentle. When they witness you passing through barriers they believed were concrete, they'll panic. Some will assault you for violating the regulations they're still following. Some will plead you to reveal the secret while refusing to perform the labor. Some will deny your reality, insisting the entrances you pass through don't exist. And some will simply sever you entirely because your liberation is a reflection to their captivity. But you cannot rescue them. You cannot unlock their entrances for them. The skeleton key only functions from within. It only triggers when someone is prepared to confront everything they've been evading. It only materializes when someone is desperate enough or shattered enough or enraged enough to cease believing in the barriers. You can share your journey. You can demonstrate the key exists, but you cannot force them to utilize it. And attempting to convince someone that barriers are fabrications when they're still gripping them for security, that's a brutality all its own. So you walk alone for a duration. That's part of the cost. The skeleton key grants you access to everything, but it also separates you from everyone still participating by the old regulations. You begin speaking a language they don't comprehend. You begin perceiving configurations they cannot detect. You begin navigating through existence in methods that appear like sorcery to minds who still believe in barriers. And that solitude, that isolation, that's not punishment, that's initiation. That's the space where you fully integrate what you discovered. Because here's the secret they absolutely don't want you to comprehend. The skeleton key doesn't just unlock entrances in this existence, it unlocks entrances between existences. It provides you access to frequencies, dimensions, degrees of awareness that exist beyond what they can monitor or dominate. You begin dreaming differently. You begin comprehending things you shouldn't comprehend. You begin connecting with iterations of yourself that exist outside time. And that's when you recognize the key wasn't designed for this world. It was designed for all worlds. They destroyed it because someone with complete access doesn't just threaten one apparatus. They threaten every apparatus, every hierarchy, every framework constructed on domination. Because once you trigger the skeleton key, you recall. You recall that you're not a citizen of this existence. You're a visitor. You recall that you selected to arrive here. You recall that you're participating in a game, but you're not bound by it. And the instant you recall that, you become threatening in methods they possess no vocabulary for. Now you're functioning on a resonance they cannot reach. You're executing moves they cannot monitor. You're accessing wisdom they cannot eliminate because the skeleton key provided you something more valuable than liberation. It provided you sovereignty, complete, ungovernable sovereignty over your own awareness. And there is no weapon against that. There is no apparatus that can contain a mind that comprehends its infinity. There is no barrier that can hold an essence that recalls how to pass through walls. They'll attempt to make you question it. They'll dispatch minds to challenge you. They'll generate situations engineered to make you doubt whether the key was genuine, whether you imagined the entire thing, whether you're losing your sanity. But you're not losing your sanity. You're losing their conditioning. And every time they attempt to trap you back in, the key triggers stronger. Every manipulation they execute just reveals you another entrance. Every snare they position just proves how frantic they are to contain what you've become. Because you're not the same being who initiated searching. You're not the innocent seeker pursuing answers. You discovered the skeleton key and it transformed you. It incinerated everything that wasn't genuine. It stripped you down to your core. It revealed what you're constructed from underneath all the conditioning, all the terror, all the false constructs. And what remained wasn't damaged, wasn't shattered, wasn't incomplete. What remained was pure, limitless awareness. And that's the most threatening thing in any existence. You want to understand why they destroyed the key centuries ago? It's because they understood. They understood that if sufficient minds discovered it, the game would terminate, the simulation would fracture, the barriers would dissolve. Every sealed entrance, every restricted zone, every forbidden wisdom, it would all become accessible. And their dominance, their control, their entire framework, it all depends on minds believing in barriers, believing in limitations, believing in restrictions. The skeleton key annihilates all of that with a single turn, and you're turning it right now. Every instant you refuse to contract, every time you pass through a barrier they declared was concrete, every instance you access something they declared was forbidden, you're turning the key. And with each turn, more entrances open, more restrictions dissolve, more of your power restores. Until one day you'll observe around and recognize there are no more barriers, no more walls, no more limitations, just infinite access to every frequency, every realm, every iteration of yourself that ever existed. They labeled you insane when you began functioning differently. They said you transformed when you ceased participating in their games. They diagnosed you when you began doubting their existence. But you weren't losing connection with their world. You were establishing contact with yours. You were recalling the blueprints they deleted. You were triggering codes they insisted didn't exist. You were discovering the skeleton key in the one location they never thought to search, inside your own awareness after they shattered everything else. And now you're threatening. Not because you're brutal, not because you're malicious, not because you want to damage anyone. You're threatening because you're liberated. And liberation is infectious. Liberation multiplies. Liberation reminds other minds that barriers are voluntary, that walls are fabrications, that everything they've been instructed about limitations and boundaries and regulations is just a narrative someone told them to keep them restricted. And you're walking evidence that the narrative isn't